Prostitution has been a controversial topic in the United States for years. While some argue that it should remain illegal due to moral and ethical concerns, I strongly support the legalization of prostitution in this country. With the decriminalization of prostitution, it will be easier to regulate the industry and ensure that those who partake are doing so willingly and safely. This topic should be actively discussed because of the potential benefits other countries have experienced from its legalization and the possibility of working with what's known as the world's oldest profession, rather than trying to spend more time and resources trying to eradicate it. We could potentially reduce sex trafficking rates, add taxation on prostitution as an industry, and create safer and more hygienic standards for those partaking in the industry. Several nonprofit organization websites have provided me with very insightful information on this topic and have a lot of data related to different models. Many studies conducted on countries that have legalized it have given comparisons and data on benefits it could potentially have in the United States. The counterargument is that prostitution should remain illegal because it is immoral and unethical. And a quote from procon.org, written in 2018, says that the idea that the state coercing its population into prostitution is, of course, a repellent. And by this they mean that the legalization would coerce individuals to enter it as a profession by its own government. However, I support the legalization of prostitution in the United States because it can be easier to regulate the industry and ensure those who are partaking are doing it willingly. We can regulate the safety and overall health of those who are partaking and eliminate underground prostitution rings for law enforcement to focus on more violent crimes. In 2019, Human Rights Watch published an article titled "Why Sex Work Should Be Decriminalized" and shared their research conducted in several countries around the globe. The article explains why it should be easier to regulate the industry and ensure those partaking are doing so willingly by stating, laws that clearly distinguish between sex work and sex crimes, like human trafficking and sexual exploitation of children, help protect both sex workers and crime victims. This stresses how important it is to erase the stigma associated with prostitution and how there are clear differences between sex work and sex crimes. Throughout their studies, they found that most men and women willingly doing the profession would prefer to work under local government standards and work with local law to maximize their own legal rights and protections rather than face the abuse and exploitation they're currently enduring. Understanding that sex work and sex crimes are two very different things is critical in fighting the opposition, protecting willing and legal sex workers, and preserving those who have been affected by sex crimes. Regulating and maintaining the safety and health of all partaking parties can be one of the best benefits of decriminalization of prostitution. With safer working conditions, sex workers meet restrictions to regular STI testing and access to mental health outlets. One of my favorite and most insightful articles by Jessica McCann in 2021, titled "Sex Work Health Outcomes in High-Income Countries, Varied Regulatory Environments, a Systematic Review," did a study focused heavily in Australia, while brothels are decriminalized in only 3 states, and did mental and physical health comparisons to sex workers in the legal and illegal states. It also found 5 key sex work legislative models as follows. The first being full criminalization, which is the legislation whereby all aspects of sex work and sex work locations and/or establishments are prohibited. Partial criminalization is the organization of sex work is prohibited. The Nordic model, which seems to be most popular in today's society, is the criminalization of purchase of sex and third parties. as well as legal, which is regulatory models whereby sex work and sex work locations and or establishments are legal. And lastly, the decriminalization, which is legislation whereby sex work and sex work locations and or establishments are decriminalized. However, criminal law may remain surrounding safe sex practices. Throughout these models, it was found that full decriminalization had lower STI rates, increased policing of condom use, and the workers demonstrated greater awareness of health conditions and health risk behaviors compared to all other models. The states with decriminalization found a greater access to free and anonymous testing, as well as other programs for mental health and risk behavior education. These are critical observations to make compared to our current criminalized models, because these types of resources aren't provided but could be easily to create a safer industry. Helping to eliminate underground sex or prostitution rings has societal, legal, and economical benefits. An article published by Marissa Jordan Galarza, titled "Legalizing Prostitution Could Benefit Our Communities," gave some insight to the fears and hardships modern-day sex workers face. She says, instead of seeing a rapist locked up, a prostitute would find themselves facing charges for prostituting, as well as facing fines and potential jail time. Not only does the illicit nature of prostitution endanger the lives and safety of sex workers, but it encourages sex trafficking and minor exploitation that ends up harming communities as a whole. She goes on to justify worries of how many sex workers are coerced at a young age into the industry by stats from the United States State Department and the United Nations International Labor Organization that prove this to be true, but claims that legalization is the only option for decreasing this trend. By having legal brothels, organizations can regulate age, services, and health that can be provided to safely pay for sex through government-sanctioned programs. Creating these programs would divert any underground purchase for service providers, because outside of a regulated brothel, there would be a much higher chance that the service that was being provided is being done unwillingly. This kind of government regulation could diminish violent crimes associated with underground services, and reports that the current rape rate could decrease by 25%. Embracing this industry we've pushed so far underground can be easily turned into a lucrative and safe way of correcting the issues that we have created. In conclusion, I believe that the legalization has better improvement for the overall well-being of society, workers, and can make a difference in crimes across our country. There are numerous benefits of legalizing prostitution in the United States by creating a safer and healthier environment for all individuals involved in the industry. We can also help to reduce the rate of sex trafficking, provide a source of income for those involved in prostitution, and eliminate the criminal underground associated with it. It is time for the United States to follow the footsteps of other countries and legalize prostitution. By providing safe spaces, generating revenue, eliminating black markets, and extending personal freedoms, the United States will be taking a step toward a more just and equitable society.